Welcome back to DevelopLex. Today it is just Weston, just solo, no Ross, sadly, but on the bright side, we are joined by Griffin Vanmeter, also known as Griff, also known as Griffy Cakes.
That's right. Yeah, Griffy Cakes. That's my street name. or my cross country. I coach the cross country kids and they call me Coach Cakes. So that's my name to connect with people.
I first met Griff, I think through Ross in some capacity at Orange Theory. If you've hung out with me personally before, you know that I spend a lot of time at Orange Theory with my wife. Have met a lot of interesting people there. Griffin was, I remember seeing his name come up on the board as Griffy Cakes, and was wearing a really interesting outfit at the time. And I was like, I got to know more about this guy. And then we've actually got to know each other a little bit through real estate and some Parks Initiative stuff. And I really wanted to have Griffin on. Should I say Griff or Griffin?
Either way, they'll both work. So
I really wanted to have Griffin on. Because I think I gravitate towards interesting people. And you said a phrase the other day in a conversation in passing. You probably didn't even know that I heard it at Kenwick Table, which is kind of your second office.
We office over there, yeah, a lot. And I grew up on Owsley. I have a big part of my formative childhood was on Owsley Avenue as a teenager. And speaking of Kenwick Table and things that change and how much one person or a different redefining of a space can do for a neighborhood. So when I was growing up, that was a bodega, and you could buy cigarettes by the single, and you could buy beer on Sunday, which is really great for, or not great, but was great in the moment for non-forward thinking teenagers who just wanted to party on their porch on Owsley Avenue. So I love Kenwick Table, and it's a really amazing transformation, 180 degrees of something that's a liability for a neighborhood and for the people in it compared to what it is now, a true asset and gathering space and a true place where there's an exchange of ideas and conversations, and we overhear things or we're connecting with people. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I love that. And I've seen you a lot at Kenwick Table. And the thing that you said the other day, and we'll dive into it at some point. I want to get into your background and everything, but the thing that you said the other day was, I want to bring a little bit of joy and weird to everything I do. You said a phrase in that capacity. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, I think, I think definitely joy. And I think for weird could be like more whimsy or just a little bit helping people be their best and unfeathered selves. You know, I want people to know that it's okay to have fun, to be a maximalist, and that, life is short. So, and I think a lot of my successful moments in life are, really trying to bring joy to people and levity to situations. And that could be using a nickname at Orange Theory. And
it worked.
Yeah, and it works. Or wearing bright socks or clothes or being loud and clapping and I love Orange Theory. I love any place where, you have the opportunity to meet people. I love movement and health. I love the gamification that happens there. But I've met so many people that are real critical in my life at Orange Theory, just like running next to them on a treadmill and celebrating these things. And some really beautiful moments and connections and people at Orange Theory. So
that's awesome.
And also like at Kenwick Table. So I think what those spaces really are, and really kind of a big part of my philosophy and what I've tried to do in my civic career, professional career, or personal career, and some of those are pretty blended, is to really develop these third spaces for people, spaces where, ideas can exchange, where culture can exchange, and people can connect, because the point of the successful humanity is really when we're connecting with other people. And it's why I live where I live. I live right by Woodland Park right now, and I love having this this 20-acre park side yard next to my house that's really just an extension of a front porch where I'm meeting people who are playing with their kids on the playground. We're meeting people through the swim team, and our family is connecting with people. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful, great asset for Lexington, and any of that type of public space is really fascinating to me. So I think what can we do as professionals to enhance that is something that I'm always after.
SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate is a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky. Affiliated with the SVN International Network, SVN has over 200 offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN helps their clients with commercial property sales, leasing, investments, and property management. Let SVN help you with your commercial real estate needs. Check us out at svnstone.com. I love that. And that is a great segue to the interview of DevelopLex. So let's, a lot of people in Lexington know you because you are a good connector. But for those that don't, Griffin Vanmeter, where are you from? This is a really loaded question. How did you get to where you're sitting at today? Give us a little bit of a background on you.
So yeah, I mean, for the most part, this is kind of funny. So hopefully this isn't public knowledge or doesn't get out into the world. This can be our secret, but I have this business called Kentucky for Kentucky, and it's all about promoting Kentucky and having fun with all of the good and the bad and the ugly of Kentucky, and kind of also kind of reframing stereotypes. And we're a place-based merchandising business, but there's a lot of Kentucky identity in that. But the truth was I was actually born in Georgia, and nobody actually knows that. So we'll have to.
I won't tell anybody.
No, so that's always, and also my business partner there, Whit, he was born in Florida. So we are transplants, and what we always say is, Kentucky by birth is something to be proud of, but Kentucky by choice is something to even be more proud of. So I was primarily raised in, between Lexington and Winchester. I went to school here as a kid, and then I ended up eventually at the University of Kentucky, which is probably the one of the big parts of my origin story in terms of what I was interested in. I always found myself either living by a park or living downtown. At first, I was living over in Ashland Park, then Gratz Park, and then for the end of my college career up on North Limestone, which is a big part of my story. And then I studied a broad range of things. I studied political science, and I studied agriculture economics, and then I ended up with an art degree, specifically in printmaking. And I loved the art classes, the art studio classes, where you were producing work and then putting that work up next to your peers and having your peers kind of critique in a positive way what was good and what could be improved about the work. And I really appreciated that collaborativeness. And then another big thing that I did at the University of Kentucky that has had so much impact on my life is I volunteered at WRFL, the local radio station. And the people that I met through WRFL were all of these amazing, and have since and were and still have and still are these amazing community cultural creators or champions who are doing these really fascinating projects. And it's an amazing network of students and community volunteers. And that's something I did even after I graduated. But that was a real pivotal institution and opportunity because it connected me to a broader Lexington than I think a lot of people necessarily get who just go to UK and kind of stay in this general, campus area. But, the experience was that, Lexington is a lot bigger than UK. And another thing that happened, I was a non-traditional student, so I was a little bit older. I started at UK when I was 22. So I also I was in more like early stage, like even though I was still in school, I was also in early stage kind of network type stuff, like with downtown people since I was living downtown. So, I have a successful great experience at University of Kentucky, and I'm friends both with students and professors, and yeah, again, interesting people doing stuff in the downtown conversation, I think, in the city conversation. A lot of those folks were like Gaines Fellows. Jim Gray is kind of part of that story, which is a big part of my story. And then I end up where it really all starts for us is I'm looking for a place to live. And I know I want to live downtown because I appreciate like the historic buildings. I love those stories. And I really love just the exchange that happens, like where you're walking down the street, or at one point I'm living by Gratz Park, and I'm walking my dog, and I end up meeting this professor who's walking their dog, and this guy's an architect. And that was the other part. I studied all those things, but I think at the end I realized I wanted to be an architect, but I was like, oh, I don't want to start all over. But I've always loved architecture, and I love design in spaces. And I think had I gone to get a master's, I would have gone in planning or architecture. And so I'm looking for a place to live. I want to live downtown, and I'm looking at a house on Jefferson Street, and when I leave the showing, I see across the street is Stella's Deli, which is 143 Jefferson Street. It's kind of, I grew up going there eating, so there's nostalgia, and I love nostalgia and love rediscovering my own nostalgia, like those moments of memory that are like core in our lives that bring kind of joy and these like warm and fuzzies. And so Stella's was like that for me growing up. Like it was a place we would go get milkshakes and burgers, and it was kind of like a little bit of a dive. Like it was hamburgers, chili. So I went over there, and the guy was selling the whole building, and he was kind of grumbly about it, but he just threw the keys at me. He's like, go look at the apartment upstairs, and this is it's going to be, maybe he was like, it's going to be $240,000. There's no negotiation. You have to buy the restaurant too. And like, I was like, all right, so I went upstairs, and there was actually this beautiful apartment, and, in this Victorian house that's there. And I was like, man, look at all this light and look at this wood. And I was like, this is my dream. I want to live above this quaint little sandwich shop in downtown. What a thing. But I was like, well, I don't want to run a restaurant. That's like hard. And I was still in school. I was finishing up my senior year, and I ended up talking to one of these other buddies of mine, a guy named Les Miller, who I kind of became friends through this like network of like downtown intellectual folks. And he had been working in restaurants, and I was like, hey, there's this thing. Are you interested in opening up a restaurant? And he's like, yeah, I am, And so like we looked at it, and his wife is named Ame Mott, and they lived up on North Limestone. And we looked at it, and we're like, well, yeah, let's see if we can kind of put this together. So then we went to try to get money from a bank, and the bank's like, they're like, okay, so you guys are a bunch of 20-year-olds who have zero experience managing and operating a business. Like we had all kind of worked in restaurants, and you really don't have any assets, balance sheet, and restaurants fail at this high rate. And you guys are asking for this money. No, is basically what we heard from like any traditional lender. And then we kind of went back to the guy. He's like, I'd be willing to own or finance this for you guys. And like some of that was maybe capital gains related, and he ended up giving us this really good deal so that we were able to get into it basically on credit cards. And we had another partner, a guy named Paul Holbrook, who was a mentor of both of ours. And we got into it, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're running this restaurant, and it gets back to this idea of like, we didn't really know, the banks were right. We didn't really have a business plan. We didn't really know how it was going to work. We had bought this kind of branded institution for Lexington, and we were like, we think we can improve the quality. We are really interested in local foods and organic food. So we did that. And then again, we didn't know what was going to happen, but we're like, let's just make it good, and let's just make it work. Let's just, whatever it takes. And That's what it was. And it was kind of the four of us getting this little restaurant thing started. And it just slowly and surely started to kind of plug. And then it was kind of like a refresh. Like people are like, oh yeah, I love Stella's, thanks for bringing this back, because Stella's had been around since 1976. Was when the guy first kind of did it. And he had owned it for, 40 years. And I think that was kind of like part of, or I guess, 30 years. And he just was like tired of doing it. And then, but we kind of came in and we were like, let's up the ante on this. And we made it about organic foods. And then we made it high quality foods. And it was still a sandwich and soup shop and brunch shop. But it was really, it was kind of this beautiful moment, and people really responded to it. And I think that is actually a Lexington lesson, is that people really want to support your work and they appreciate good quality work. And Lexington is a great test market for those things. And because there's not an oversaturation of these type of spaces, people really can kind of like flock to them. And I do think that's a really unique thing about Lexington, is that ideas can work here because there is support for it. And people are hungry for these type of things. So they want to see an increase in quality. So there's kind of a funny little side note. I never moved in upstairs. I couldn't afford the rent, of what we needed to charge to make it work. And I was like, oh man. So I ended up, just side story, that's how I end up on North Limestone. Is I end up moving with a girlfriend of mine up on North Limestone. And then the other kind of thing that happens in all of that. So this is in 2006. And at that point, we're kind of these young guys who are doing this project. We're doing, historic preservation, kind of downtown renewal, adaptive kind of reuse type stuff on Jefferson. And at that point on Jefferson, there are some businesses, but we're kind of kind of good, fresh energy. And because I was kind of the front of the house, and I've always been a sign dance man. So I'm always the guy cheerleading on the sidewalk, waving the sign, before the big blowy things.
That was you.
That was me. The big blowy things are based on me. I actually have a pending lawsuit against the, big blowy guys, to reclaim my, my patented moves. So because I was kind of always the sign dance guy in front of the house, what it ended up doing for us, and I think is really important, we ended up developing social capital. So we kind of already had these networks, but the city would be like, okay, hey, we want to do a downtown entertainment task force. So how do we drive more economy to downtown? Or what if we had a music alliance task force? Like, how do we get more music and bands? And because we were the young guys, they were like, let's get the Stella's guys. And because I was kind of front of the house, and my buddy who really wanted to operate the restaurant and has done a tremendous job with it, he was kind of always at the restaurant. I would go to these task force civic opportunity type meetings. And it was really through that and those networks that ended up kind of starting to spur all of these other projects that I was in. And again, I was young. I had the time. I was, I didn't have kids. I didn't have a family. So like, that's a great opportunity to get involved with these projects, because you don't necessarily know what they're all going to lead to. And for me, that led to, kind of meeting folks from the community foundation who were applying kind of philanthropy and storytelling and connecting resources to nonprofits and really trying to improve the city. It connected me into the civic conversation, into the political conversation. And that is where I started to get going. And then my partner, we had the Stella's thing, and then my partner and I were both living on North Limestone. We're like, hey, we've just done this at Stella's. Do you think we could start to do this again organically on North Limestone? Because we both live in this neighborhood. We both want to see the quality of life improve in this neighborhood for everyone in it. and that's how the rest of that kind of story goes, is we were looking for, maybe a corner property would come up for sale, and one get Al's Bar. And so my partner bought Al's Bar, and he did that and developed that into, and kind of the same thing. It's still a bar, but we're going to change some of the policies. We're going to make it better. We're going to make it more inviting.
There's a little bit of like social capital that you can use to hopefully drive more people into the business. And
and just like kind of applying the same thing, like, let's make the music good, let's make the food good, let's make the service good. And it can still be, it still is a bar, so like the what is still the same, like this gathering place, but can we improve that, and also then improve the economies of this, and again, take it from a liability into an asset. And then so that's kind of started, and so that's like 2007, 2008. And we just were, if we could afford to do a project, we would do it. And some of those we did together. Some of them we would do separate. Some of them with kind of different partners. And so we kind of just started to build it. And at the same time, the guy I was leasing for, and this is a big part of the leasing from my apartment, my personal apartment, he was involved with the neighborhood association. And so he was like, hey, do you want to go to the neighborhood association? I was like, yeah, sure. So I just started to go to those and get really engaged with the neighborhood at the neighborhood associate level. And this is all North Limestone and kind of around Limestone and Loudoun, or probably really from 5th Street North or 4th Street North. So kind of north of Transy, which is obviously this old, historic, important neighborhood. It's like the first pathway into Lexington, the old Frontier Highway, that, was the first industrial route down from the river in Maysville, which used to be called Limestone. And so a major, important, like kind of population driver, immigration driver, industry driver, a lot of old industry there, from hemp and malt houses and transportation and power. So these really, and like the railway. So this really interesting neighborhood context, but at the same time, a historically invested in neighborhood. Like it was redlined, and, has experienced generations of disinvestment. And so we were really curious if we could help change that. And again, we never approached it as, I think our approach is always like, can we help the building? Can we help the neighborhood? Can we help the people who are going to be leasing the space? And like, we never thought about it as necessarily like our bank accounts first. We were always neighborhood first, because it was like, we live in the neighborhood. So that's where all of that stuff started to happen. And I think what I also learned along the way was this like power of storytelling and power of pictures and graphics and showing like what is possible. So we kind of separate in 2008. I always have this joke. I became a landlord, but I started owning property, but really I needed a job that made money. So a buddy and I, we started a branding firm called Bullhorn. His name's Brad Flowers, and this is in 2008. And we were just interested in, elevating the design conversation. We wanted to see what was possible. And as we got into it, we just started to say yes to jobs. Like, you need a poster hung up all over town because the circus is coming to town. We're your guys. We're going to hang that up. You need us to get a liquor license to sell beer at the Beaux-Arts Ball. We're your guys. Like, we knew how to kind of do these things. So it was like, it was full hustle, like just weird entrepreneurship hustle. You want us to pass out your t-shirts at your event? Yes. You want us to design your website? We didn't know how to design websites, but we were like, yes. And then we're like, let's just figure this out. And so I've always been a big, like, let's build the ship while we're flying, and say yes, because you're going to get into some great opportunities and you're going to learn. And so I think that's kind of been an entrepreneurial story of mine for all these projects I've been involved with. Like, let's just say yes, let's give it the patience that it needs to develop. And so we did Bullhorn. And then along the way, as soon as we hired staff, this was such a critical thing. So like, at the neighborhood level, we're writing these like $2,500 neighborhood improvement grants. We're applying private capital to these buildings to try to get them fixed up and performing and stable, a lot of stabilization. So we're kind of like working on neighborhood stabilization through private capital and also trying to apply some public dollars, but the public dollars are small. And then as soon as we get some staff at Bullhorn, we kind of make the decision like as a philanthropic output. And one thing our business can do is in our downtime, let's have our staff write and manage larger neighborhood level grants. So the consent decree has happened and Lexington, I don't remember exactly what year that is. Maybe it's like 2010. Maybe it's a year before. So we end up writing some stormwater improvement grants. And then we actually manage those as Bullhorn with like some of our staff. And they go really well. And they're actually larger grants. Like one's a $500,000 grant that leads to, a $200,000 grant. And it's like, okay, these are really big and we're managing them and they're having positive impact on the neighborhood. We're learning a lot. And then it's at that point, and we were talking about this right before the podcast started, that we get, and it's kind of, again, through that social connection, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, hey, let's get these guys who are doing interesting projects. Let's have a meeting. There was a meeting with the mayor's administration. Jim Gray's the mayor at the time, and he called the meeting with Bluegrass Community Foundation. Lisa Atkins had just recently come on as her role as the head of that. And they've just kind of completed the legacy trail. Has kind of happened as the World Equestrian Games. And they're like, look, there's large grants that Lexington would qualify for, but nobody's actually going after them. And they don't really necessarily fit exactly within the government structure. But are you guys, like, you North Lime guys, are you interested in going after some of these grants? And so we did. And then we successfully got some of them. And that's what we realized is like nobody's telling these stories, even though these stories need to be told. And there's projects here. So some buddies and I, and some of us went after these grants, and mainly because there was a small area plan for North Limestone that said, hey, there really needs to be a community development corporation up here that is trying to drive quality of life, economic development, improvement for the neighborhood. And so we saw that, but then there was like, I think Lexington is historically really good at master plans, but then implementing the plans is a different thing because it takes capital and staff. And that's always where there's a deficit, right? Is applying the capital to these plans that are really thoughtful and have a lot of great engagement. And I think that's always the missing thing. And I don't think that's unique to Lexington. I think that's just a normal issue where it's like you plan, but no money to implement the plan. So then we started to get some money the first project was a live work housing project. And the granting entity was called Art Place America. And they were interested in the concepts of placemaking and how you could use art and creatives to help define and lead development. And development in a broader sense. It could be sticks and bricks. It could be economic development in terms of people, like empowering people. It could be empowering policy or projects. So those are kind of these three things. And so we did a live work housing thing using shotgun houses, which was like a vernacular of that street. This was on York Street. And I think we did 17 houses, and we tapped into Affordable Housing Trust Fund money to kind of help subsidize to keep those housing costs suppressed. And I think that's another thing we like recognize is like construction costs are construction costs. Like it doesn't matter if it's affordable housing or high-end housing. It's like the costs are going to be the costs, and so there has to be a subsidy to drive down the costs. And I think that's the importance of an affordable housing trust fund to help developers make those projects a reality, or infill redevelopment money. Like that's, we want those things to happen, those things have to be bolstered with the subsidy that makes it a reality. So we did that project, and then we also did it just kind of spurred all sorts of good stuff. We did this night market project up there, which was an idea. I was down in New Orleans once, and I saw this idea, and I'm like, man, this could work here. So we did, and it was this really beautiful ephemeral moment in Lexington where people are like, oh yeah, the night market, and it worked. And we would have 600 vendors apply for 80 spaces per market, and these cool things. And we did park improvements, and it was the work was really amazing. The work was hard because we are trying. What I think we realized too is that we're trying to fix huge, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of $1 million issues because of disinvestment and because of socioeconomics and the reality, and trying to bridge people out of poverty and how tough that is. But we were trying to do those on, $50,000 grants, $100,000 grants. And the reality is it's just not sustainable to affect that level change without some sort of major revenue driving it. And that's really where you need the public sector to kind of drive some of those value systems and some of that critical need. And so I think that's what we learned is we did this project where we impacted, the 17 families that moved into these houses, and that was really positive. But again, the need for affordable housing in Lexington at that time was 5,000 units. So the question is are you better served doing the project, the demonstration project to prove proof of concept, which we did, and it was successful, or are you better served lobbying for a dedicated, affordable, trust fund revenue line? And truth be told, if you really want to affect the most people, you need to have that policy element to keep it sustainable, because it's not necessarily sustainable completely just on philanthropy or grants alone. So that all kind of crescendoed. I mean, there's a lot of stories in all of that, but we also start Kentucky for Kentucky early on in that time period, and the basic common denominator is it's I just want these things to be better. I want Kentucky to be better. I want Lexington to be better. I want people's lives to be better. And so finding these different niches to operate in, to get those to get these entities off the ground and to kind of reframe things. And then what's been really nice is the ripple effect of all of those. And I think that's really powerful. And it's kind of from that we've kind of I've continued to build this network and this experience that allows me to operate obviously kind of in different spheres and different industries, all again to improve the lives of everybody.
Craftsmen Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmenContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
The common theme of that is that I feel like if somebody asked you what you did, or what you do, I think you'd have a really tough time explaining, because there's just such a mass of things. But it does have kind of a common theme there, is that you do just want to improve things.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the other common thing is that we would just always say yes, let's try this until it's not going to work. So there was the fear of failure was so low because there was no place to go but up. So I can cite really specific examples. So when we started Bullhorn, 2008, height of the recession, we don't know anything about marketing. We don't have any clients. But what we do have is we have a space that we can operate out of if we need, really affordable. And, it was me and a buddy, and we didn't have we didn't really have any major, expenses either. So there was zero risk in us starting this, like, let's give this a try for 6 months. And if it doesn't work, we'll do something else. And we were kind of like odd jobbing to kind of make that happen. So, same thing with the Community Development Corporation. It's like, yeah, let's apply for a grant. If we get it, we get it. And then we'll kind of go from there. And then we'll apply for the next thing and the next thing. And yeah, again, zero risk. And even Stella's is like, okay, maybe this deal isn't going to come together because we're not going to get financing. But let's see if we can cobble this together and try. And then, but what that has spurred is all of these other things. So I think some of it is having some risk aversion. And at that point, it's easier because, again, no family, no kids, just, some young scrappiness. And then Kentucky for Kentucky is really the same thing. That didn't start as a business by any means. It's just started as, what if we did something fun for the state of Kentucky to like highlight all of its uniqueness and the fun stuff? And we knew how, I think a story, again, that's kind of back to the storytelling. We knew how to like tell stories and to create moments of conversation and moments of shareability. And it's just kind of like tapping into that. So like Kentucky for Kentucky, we did it. And the first thing was a Kickstarter commercial to kickstart to buy a Kickstarter campaign to try to get a Super Bowl commercial for the state of Kentucky. So we're like, hey, we're going to raise $3 million. We came nowhere close to raising the $3 million. But what we did, we kind of got people excited, and like, this is fun. And like, it was entertaining and it was refreshing. So we kind of like use that collateral and that capital, that social capital again, to say, okay, hey, what if we kind of what if we guerrilla changed the state logo, which was Unbridled Spirit, which is very smart, it's safe, it's corporate, it's from the state. They spent a gazillion dollars in Bevan's campaign. They spent a gazillion dollars on this marketing campaign. We're like, it's actually kind of like too smart. Like nobody has ever been like, man, I just can't wait to go to Kentucky to like get an Unbridled Spirit sticker and put it on my car and let everybody know that I was in Kentucky and now I have that unbridled spirit too. But yeah, it's smart because it's like horses and bourbon, like signature industries. But we were like, that's so funny. And it's like, so like silly, but what if when we were doing that initial campaign, people would be like, oh, hey, do you know that the Happy Birthday song was invented in Kentucky? That kicks ass, man. And so like people kept on like saying like Kentucky kicks ass. And we're like, that's so funny. Like, and so like kind of like, like or like just kind of like juvenile, but in a good way. What if we change the slogan to Kentucky kicks ass? And so we sent out a press release to like New York Times, LA, all the major news outlets, and just it was like a one-page release that just said, we've been tasked with changing the tagline, the slogan of Kentucky from Unbridled Spirit. The new slogan is Kentucky kicks ass, and this is how we came up with it. Blah blah blah. But so we sent that out, and it got like picked up, and like people were really excited. But obviously, the state never hired us to do that. And so there was this really great moment in our career where, and yeah, I think part of it is like kind of turning what could be negatives into positives, and like just because of, and just being able to reframe those. And so the reframe was the USA Today. There was a reporter from the USA Today who's kind of writing a long form article on it and like writing long form, like about state slogans. And so she finally like calls up a bureaucrat, gets some guy who was in the film commission at the time, and I think a really nice guy. And she's like, who hired these two, hooligans to, and he's like, nobody hired. That's like just a prank. Like they have, and he had this line. He's like, this isn't for real. He said they have a constituency of no one. And so that's what they let. So then she's like, oh, I'm going to get you guys, you've wasted my time. You've played with serious media, and I'm going to show you what serious media is about. I'm going to fillet you guys. And so she writes this like really kind of like negative, like look at what these dummy dudes, hooligans did. But what it ends up doing, and what that quote, this consistency of no one, because what was happening prior, we had gotten all of this positive media attention. Like it was on like Conan O'Brien, it was everywhere. And we kept on getting people who were expats who were saying, or who were here and saying, thank you so much. Like, I love this. And I've never thought about Kentucky this way. And, I'm in LA, I'm in Chicago, I'm in Miami, I'm in Atlanta. And it's so refreshing to have this voice of like creativity, like kind of really get my juices going. Again, this nostalgia going for this place that I actually do love, but it's like complicated. And so we were receiving all of that. And then this article comes out where like the state, what it really was the state at the time squashing young creatives, which is like what they're trying to do. Is like, we want to amplify our creative voices, but they kind of squashed it. And then it just erupted from there, where all of these people started to cream the state because we generated more PR, in a 2-week span with using spending $500 on a logo that Cricket Press designed, the Kentucky Kicks Ass logo. That was our only expense because we were able to make like the video in-house. Like, so for $500 in a press release, we generated more positive PR for the state of Kentucky than they really ever had on large budgets. And so they were getting kind of lampooned by everybody that finally they like call us in there. And at this point it's the Steve Brashear administration. And like, we're meeting with the tourism. They're like, guys, like, they like, there was kind of like a mea culpa on there. It was kind of a beautiful moment, like that we're like meeting, and they're like, can you guys help us out? Like, you guys are obviously like, fun. And
we like you guys. We don't like you guys.
Yeah, we just kind of wanted to kind of like chill, And we weren't really doing anything besides like recirculating the stories of, the PR. So I think that's always the thing, is like use the media, to your advantage. Because again, at the end of the day, I think really most people want to be like entertained. And I think that's why we use a lot of what we go to in social media is like, we want to be entertained. And again, so it wasn't even a business, but we had made some campaign posters and shirts, and people were just like hungry for them. And they're like, I love this. And so we just started to kind of like slowly, like we would do like a little pop-up shop, like, hey, we're going to do a pop-up shop at that time, Moore's Bookshop or CD Central. CD Central was maybe our first like pop-up shop in Moore's Book. And it's just those guys, like a lot of local businesses just kind of like having fun and creating energy and seeing where that energy takes us. And so we did it. And now it's like, that business is now 14 years old. And like we're like, well, maybe this is a business, like, oops, and it's kind of been like that. Like we kind of keep on having these positive oops moments, like, Cocaine Bear is like one of those. And like, we kind of have these viral moments of, fried chicken bone necklaces or just these weird products. And then what's fun about it compared to like client work is like you put out an idea and it's either like good or bad. There's nobody, the market is telling you if the idea is good. And maybe there's some ideas that are good in terms of like, oh, I like this is fun, but I don't actually, it's entertaining, but I don't actually want this in my house. Like we have Silver Charm, was a Derby winner who is out at he's a thoroughbred, and we did a project where we petrified Silver Charm's poop and put it in a jar. Like it's this like art and so it like picks up all this attention, and like they're like fun gifts, but not everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to buy a $200 jar of Silver Charm's poop. Like it's a joke, but I don't like the joke that much, So, but the thing is about those things is they create these like entertainment moments for people. So yeah, I think that's like been a big focus is saying yes, and then the other side is like what can a business do to improve a local community, and how can you use either your product or your why? And I think when all these businesses I've been associated with, there's a really strong why of improvement to the community. If it's local foods, historic preservation, if it's marketing, branding, if it's neighborhood development, or if it's highlighting these really great people, places, and things in a state. So it's like, it's all economic development around some, what we feel are really core values of things that drive quality of life.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
Man, so many. I want to introduce this idea to you. I talked about this to Ross, and I'm going to put you on the spot. I think because our time is limited on this podcast, I want to introduce this segment of Griffy Takes, which would be I don't even know. It would just be your own. I just think we have to workshop, maybe not right this second, but some sort of workshop of just giving you an outlet of time to just say what's on your mind. Because I feel like there's a lot.
Oh yeah, my stream of consciousness.
Yeah. And I think that has been proven over, I guess, 2006 to today. With some of the projects that you've worked on, because you say these, it's crazy because I didn't know you at the time, but like you say these things like Kentucky Kicks Ass, Night Market, Bullhorn Creative, obviously Kentucky for Kentucky, Stella's, like those are some really big, impactful projects in the city of Lexington. So one, kudos. Two, I think it kind of goes to you and your partners that you do like to take things and just like add value. Mm-hmm. What, I guess, current day, what are some things that like today Griffin Vanmeter gets excited about?
Yeah. And I appreciate those kudos, and I appreciate being part of all of these projects and sometimes at the ground floor of them, but and something to really like another big common denominator to all of their success. The true success is actually kind of building really strong teams, like where what I've been able to do is help enable other entrepreneurs who are creative or have this product and this passion and and these skills, help elevate those into successful businesses, and if that's like with Les, my partner at Stella's, like that, he and his wife, like they're really, what I've really just been, again, it's the sign dancer. I'm not always the person making the sausage in the back. So the critical aspect is all of that is, like really finding great people that you want to work with, that you can work with, and really enabling and getting out of the way of their ideas. But, I think there's in philanthropy, there's like kind of this idea of like, instead of starting something, find the people who are doing really great work and support that work, because we don't always need to start a new thing. There's usually some organization or some person who's doing it and doing it at a really high level and doing it really deeply because they're probably from that area and like they have, a connection. So I think that's really critical, is the team aspect and to not micromanage the team. Like I think those are kind of probably the failure projects, are when I get too micromanagey with the team and not like letting things do, really, really blossom and letting people blossom the way they have. Or like there's definitely been a lot more successes, but then there's moments of like, oh man, should have gotten out of the way of that. Like that was good. But the question of what, thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to be here, and to anytime you give me a microphone, I'm going to go over time and just really rock and roll. So
I think it's great. And I think the other thing that I want to touch on there too, just before we leave it, is I think nostalgia powers a lot of us. You touched on nostalgia. I think nostalgia powers a lot of us. And I think that like sitting around and telling stories, whether it feels good for us now or whether it inspires like another person that's listening to this, would be like, I should do something creative. Like, I do think that's a big deal. So our nostalgia not only empowers us, but it also empowers like others.
Yeah. And I think what it is like seeking for familiarity. And seeking for experience. And the question of like, what am I up to now? And what I'm most passionate about is, and talk about like jumping in on a team, is this parks ballot referendum. So I think all these projects I've been on have been important. They've been important to me. They've been important to the community. But when I'm thinking about what project am I on that has the most lasting legacy impact, generational impact, probably not Cocaine Bear, even though that's maybe not, but I'm working on this parks referendum, which, if successful, it will deliver catalytic investment into our public spaces in Lexington for generations and generations to come. So like the early estimates put it at like $8 to $9 million a year for capital improvements to our public parks. And I believe so much in the power of parks for all quality of life, if it's health, if it's economic development, if it's connectivity, movement, solace, like it really gets back to like your public space and how great is your public space in your town. And so thinking about what this can mean, so just as a baseline, this $8 to $9 million a year for, improved playgrounds, improved trails, new trails, swimming pools, benches, anything we interact with as a physical infrastructure amenity in a park, more pickleball courts, which is a big thing. There's like, and it's great. I just love to see all these different people, different generations, different social economics moving, and pickleball is great for that. It's awesome that that's a major driver. But one thing that like to think about is like just over the next 10 years, that's like $80 to $90 million as a baseline of investment in our public space. And that's staggering. And we are actually in this great dawn of investment of where we've actually had critical investment. So we've had $50 million going to Gatton Park, which is tremendous, like privately raised philanthropic dollars. That's really a beautiful thing for Lexington because it shows that the folks that have the resources really do want to invest in the public realm. We have the Town Branch Trail, another $50 million. And then parks, just through the ARPA funds, just got $30 million that they turned into $47 million so we're talking about $150 million that have been invested over the last, or currently being invested over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And that's like tremendous. We have no idea the impact of those dollars. I mean, the science or the data usually bears out that it's like a 4 to 11x return on investment of dollars put into public spaces. So, just as a baseline, that could those projects could generate $600 million of economy. And I think that's like, I was thinking, if you think about like the big projects in big cities, like the High Line, like that was a $200 million project that generates, $1 billion a year. Central Park generates $1 billion a year in economic development. And so I'm really interested in this project that we're on now. So I'm helping this group on the fundraising for the campaign and helping them on the branding and helping them tell some narratives. And I have a really great 2 or 3 really amazing colleagues, but like Victoria Meyer and David Lowe, who have really championed this. Like, I'm so proud of their work. My whole life, I'm like, my civic career, I'm like, man, Parks needs a dedicated fund, and they've figured this out and got this thing on the ballot. And I'm just so proud to be on this team with them to help deliver this for the city of Lexington, for our children, our children's children. And parks are so great because they touch everybody. 90% of Fayette County residents use parks. And if you're looking at why a business would locate in a town or why a person wants to live in a town, it's like quality of life. And Lexington has that in spades, and it's about to get that much better.
I went and sat with David at your all's office, Kenwick table, not too long ago, and I really had no idea what to expect. I think the statistic behind ROI on parks and economic development, that's really interesting. I also just was looking at he showed me some back end stuff of current investments that are going into parks. They are very, very expensive to maintain today. And so am I understanding correctly that this initiative that will be added to the ballot this year is something that will up the funding to be able to, one, invest in what we have today, but two, improve? Is that kind of the end goal?
That's right. So yeah, it's enhance and improve. And so currently there's 105 public parks in Lexington, separate of the HOA, separate of the schools or the church parks, which are also great that we have all of these, but 105 approximate parks that are managed by Parks and Rec. And those are the big systems like the Masterson, the Jacobson, the Chilito, Castlewood, Coldstream, but also the trails, and then also the smaller neighborhood parks like Brucetown or Hillendale that are critical to the daily lives of all of Lexington. The moms with their kids, or the people wanting to go for a walk, or people walking their dogs. So
side note, I ran through Hillendale Park this morning.
Oh, nice! It's really cool.
Right next to my house.
I think Hillendale is about to get a new shelter, a new water fountain, new playground. So there's some major investments, and so right now there's a project log of over 400 projects that came out of the 2008 Parks Master Plan, and about 50% of those projects are basically upgrades and improvements to existing infrastructure. So Hillendale is an example of that. They need to build a new shelter. That shelter's failing. So that would be an improvement, renovation to an existing facility. And then the other half are new projects that could happen within a park. So maybe the master plan maybe also calls out for let's add a neighborhood feature to Hillendale Park. And what that neighborhood feature is maybe isn't quite defined yet, but we want to budget for that. And that could be, maybe that's a piece of public art, or maybe that's a new trail that goes through there. So half of them are those type projects, and then they're kind of weighted and prioritized based on need and social need. But this money would be transformative for the Parks Department, and really kind of set a baseline to where, and this other great, and we've talked about this too, this other great aspect of it too is that this money will really serve as seed capital to generate additional philanthropic grant and state and federal grant dollars. So bringing additional tax dollars back home. And that was kind of what just happened with ARPA funds, the $30 million, getting that into $47 million that Parks just invested in. So that type of stuff is being able to bring Cardinal Run North Park online. So that's an additional 350 acres of public space that Lexington will get to enjoy because we've had that capital to invest in that.
That's amazing. And practically, how can somebody learn more about the initiative? Yeah,
so the website is yesforparkslex.com, and that has all the information about the ballot, the language, how it came to be, the capital needs. It has all the project tables that you and I were just talking about that are sortable by park, by council district, by priority, and then also by is it new or is it an improvement? So you can kind of sort all that. So it's a great resource for anybody that's looking for more information. We really want people to spread this to their networks. I think what we have an opportunity that I think in Lexington you don't have that many. So first of all, parks are nonpartisan. So Republicans use parks, Democrats use parks, all social economic people use parks, all age demographics use parks. such a polarized world, to be on an issue that is nonpartisan is really tremendous. And also, like in Lexington specifically, where we obviously have, there's like the, we have the growth divide balance because of the urban service boundary, and you have the ag econ focus side, and then you have the kind of more of a a commercial development expansion side. So what's really great about this project is that both of those entities and kind of the different lobbies and institutions that promote those two different philosophical ways of development, they're both on this initiative. Like, so it's a common ground that what we're all seeing is like the best way to develop Lexington is to invest in our public space. And I think that's not just our thesis, but that's what's been borne out by data. And while there's been 600 similar referendums that have happened across the United States, is that, people use these things and they're so critical to our daily lives. And what I would love to see too, from a policy perspective, is even more, when we're thinking about development, putting public space first. And I think you can end up with tremendous return on investment and attraction when you have that. So like what I would love to see is like a 10,000 acre park system. Like that could be a regional park that's part of like a greater Lex system, that's part of like Scott County, Lexington, Fayette County, whatever, so a large park. So then that way also people are able to really enjoy this landscape that is critical and also kind of endangered. It's definitely endangered. But I don't think Lexington does a good enough job of getting people in this landscape that we're trying to protect. So I would love to see more policy around that, like public use of our green sea.
Outside, and we'll put the link to visit that website, and I'm also sure that people can find you or David, or is it Victoria? At Kenwick Table as well.
Yeah, you can find us. You can find us a lot of places. Like they've had, hundreds and hundreds of meetings with a lot of various stakeholders. So we're very findable and also really open and want to engage with everybody. Our goal is that we want people to show up to the ballot box, one, informed, but also so passionate and excited to vote yes. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited to vote yes. And we need neighbors talking to neighbors saying, hey, this is really important. And this is why it's important. So,
final question to lead us out of the interview. What is another thing about, it can be something that you're involved in, or it can be something just Lexington related in general right now, that you feel empowered or excited about with the direction of our city? You've been around the city for a very long time. You've done a lot of things. What's something you feel excited about?
That's great. A great question. And there's a couple initiatives that I'm really excited about beyond this parks and what all that will lead to. But I'm really proud of the work that DevelopLex does to demystify democracy in city government. And so I think that's critical in terms of community engagement. So I've been super excited to see that entity develop into the really the institution that it is, and the trust that's built with community members. Because I think the more civically engaged we are as a city, the better projects will be and the better Lexington will be. So I'm pumped about that. I'm really excited about the new children's museum idea, like where they're talking about doing a big kind of children's museum, that project. So I'm excited to see that come to fruition. I'm always really excited about the work that the Bluegrass Community Foundation is doing, connecting, philanthropy to causes. I think all of that stuff, and also any institution that is, there's a million institutions that are helping the public good. So I love learning about those. I love trying to support those. So there's, I think I could probably name 1,000. So I think I'm excited for anybody that is trying to make Lexington better for everybody. So that's how I'd love to end it.
Love it. Thanks, Griff.
Cool. Thanks, guys.